Chapter 1: The Beginning. In 1955, in San Francisco, a young woman gave birth to a baby boy. She was just 23 years old and not ready to raise a child. The boy was soon adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, a modest couple living in California. They named him Steve Jobs. From the start, he was different. Restless, curious, rebellious. He was fascinated with machines, tinkering with electronics in his garage, often with his neighbor, a boy named Steve Wozniak. Steve was intelligent, but he struggled in school. He was easily bored, always searching for something deeper, something more. He would later say that much of what shaped him came not from classrooms, but from curiosity. Chapter 2: A Dropout Who Kept Learning. After high school, Steve attended Reed College in Oregon. But tuition was expensive, and he saw little purpose in the required classes. So after one semester, he dropped out. Yet he didn't leave campus. He slept on friends' floors, returned soda bottles for spare change, and wandered into classes that fascinated him. One of those was calligraphy. He learned about fonts, spacing, and typefaces. It had no practical use at the time, but years later, that single decision gave the Macintosh its beautiful typography. Steve once said, "You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards." For him, dropping out wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a different way of learning. Chapter 3: The Birth of Apple. In 1976, at just 21 years old, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak built their first computer in a garage. They called it the Apple I. It was crude by today's standards, just a circuit board with a keyboard, but it was the start of something extraordinary. They went on to release the Apple II, one of the first mass-market personal computers. It was a success, and suddenly, Apple was on the map. Then came the Macintosh. In 1984, Steve Jobs introduced it to the world with a legendary commercial and an unforgettable keynote. It was the first computer with a graphical user interface, something almost magical at the time. But inside Apple, tensions grew. Jobs was brilliant, but also demanding, relentless, and often difficult. In 1985, after a power struggle, Steve Jobs was forced out of the very company he created. Chapter 4: Exile and Reinvention. Most people would have seen this as a crushing defeat. Steve Jobs saw it as freedom. He founded a new company, Next, dedicated to building high-end computers for education and business. Though Next never became a commercial success, its software would later form the foundation of Apple's operating systems. At the same time, Jobs purchased a small graphic studio from George Lucas. That studio became Pixar. For nearly a decade, Jobs invested, pushed, and believed in the company, even when it struggled. Then, in 1995, Pixar released Toy Story. It was the first fully computer-animated feature film. The movie was a triumph, both critically and financially. Pixar went on to create a string of hits, Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Monsters, Inc., and more. Steve Jobs had turned a struggling animation studio into the leader of an entire industry. Chapter 6: Revolutionizing the World. By the mid-1990s, Apple was dying. Its products were confusing, its vision unclear, and its finances near collapse. In 1997, Apple bought Next, and with it, Steve Jobs returned. He walked back into the company he once built, this time older, wiser, but still relentless. Jobs made bold moves. He cut unneeded products. He focused Apple on simplicity. And he forged a partnership with Microsoft to keep the company afloat. Then came the rebirth. The iMac. Bright, colorful, playful. It wasn't just a computer. It was a statement. Apple was back. But Steve Jobs wasn't finished. Chapter 7. Revolutionizing the World. In 2001, Apple launched the iPod. 1,000 songs in your pocket. Then, iTunes. For the first time, music was digital, portable, and legal to purchase in a single click. In 2007, Jobs walked on stage and introduced a device that would change the world forever. The iPhone. It wasn't just a phone. It was an iPod, a phone, an internet communicator, all in one. Then came the App Store and the iPad. Each launch redefined not just technology, but culture. Steve Jobs had turned Apple from a struggling computer company into a global icon. Chapter 7. The Man Behind the Vision. Jobs was not an easy man. He was demanding, intense, sometimes harsh. But he had an extraordinary gift, the ability to see what others could not. He believed design was not just how something looked, it was how it worked. He obsessed over details, even the inside of a product, where no customer would ever look. Influenced by Zen Buddhism, he valued simplicity and focus. His personal life reflected it too. For years, he lived with little more than a mattress, a lamp, and a table. He was known for his uniform, a black turtleneck, jeans, and sneakers. Simple, minimal, consistent. And he had what colleagues called a reality distortion field. Jobs could convince people to attempt the impossible, and somehow, they often succeeded. Chapter 8. The Final Years. In 2003, Jobs was diagnosed with a rare form of pancreatic cancer. He resisted traditional surgery at first, trying alternative diets and treatments, but eventually he underwent surgery. For nearly a decade, he battled the disease while continuing to lead Apple. He introduced the iPhone, the iPad, the App Store. Even as his health declined, his vision never faltered. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away. He was only 56 years old. Chapter 9. The Legacy. Apple went on to become the first company in history to reach $1 trillion valuation. Billions of people now use devices shaped by Jobs' vision. But his legacy is not just measured in numbers. It's measured in philosophy. He once said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life." And of course, stay hungry, stay foolish. Steve Jobs was more than an entrepreneur. He was a dreamer, a rebel, a perfectionist, a man who believed technology, guided by art and vision, could move humanity forward. And in many ways, it did. Thank you for watching. This was narrated by Natalie. We work hard to make the story sound as natural as possible with the help of AI. Don't forget to subscribe and like for more inspiring stories.